blessing. I really get a lot of encouragement just from being with all of you on these once a month Zooms. So it is my honor to introduce Rochelle, who's going to talk about real learning. And she discovered this author when she was first looking for Advent books, picture books for kids, and then encountered her again later on this Take Up and Read podcast, where she was helping moms get into the Word. So I think this is wonderful just to have this input today. And Rochelle, I'm going to let you take over.
Great. Thank you so much, Joyce. I appreciate it. So, like Joyce said, this book is by Elizabeth Foss, and I first found her when I was preparing to write an article on Advent. And she has a whole collection of, like a list online of Advent books that are picture books you can teach your children. But this particular book, she actually wrote in 2000. And then it was completely revised and republished in 2020. And what I really found interesting, because I was able to look at both copies, one through the public library system, the one I purchased, is that she did not just edit and like republish it, because it's so much of her story, kind of like a memoir. So she actually, there's like specific ways that affects the style of the book. Okay, so I want to go through it with y'all. So first of all, she is a homeschool mom of 9. And when she wrote the book 20 years ago, she was pregnant with her 7th, and her oldest was 11.
Rochelle, did she used to have a newsletter? I feel like I got a newsletter from an Elizabeth.
Probably so, because these were like, pre-Instagram, Facebook. I mean, this was, well, let's just say I wasn't homeschooling in 2000. I was in college. So you would know, I wouldn't know. Can y'all hear over my dehumidifier? Do I need to turn it off? You can hear okay?
Yeah.
All right. So when she published Real Learning Revisited, her youngest child was 11, and 20 years had passed. So I love the perspective of, she's the young idealistic mom, and she's busy in the trenches, as we say, homeschooling her kids, 6 kids and 1 on the way, and all still pretty much in elementary years. And then her coming, now her oldest is 31, and she's had 2 more babies. And what she does with each chapter, well, I'm going to get onto this, but anyway, she makes notable changes. So I've got a list to keep me on track, so I don't keep you all afternoon. First of all, you can see the old one, it's like a very sweet cover, and it says Real Learning, Education in the Heart of the Home. And the new one has actually a picture, a photograph of her kids, a couple of them, and it's Real Learning Revisited. There's also, the second one has a foreword by Sarah Mackenzie. So I think they have some overlap in their audience. And then instead of just rewriting the story, because she would have to like retell the whole tale, she, at the end of every chapter, says what I know now. So she kind of continues the story and then is reflecting now on her idealism, but also like the story and how it played out, because she's talking about sports, and then the what I know now, she's able to go on and explain where her kids went with sports, and some of them became professional athletes. Or when she talks about picture study and how they're doing it all, with her dad going to the National Gallery of Art. Like, her dad passed, so she's sentimental about that, but she's realizing now, like, some of these children become artists. So I just really enjoyed her perspective. She doesn't just edit it all, she reflects. And then in the first book, she actually has it heavily illustrated with her own children's artwork. So it's a lot of pictures. And then these little like clip art pieces that are sweet, but it's very, almost like Androli. Am I saying that right? Androli. Like a very idealized look at motherhood, and really sweet pictures by children. The new one doesn't have all that artwork. It's like completely void of artwork. So it kind of shifts the feel, because I read the republished version, and then when I was flipping through the old copy, I realized, oh, this looked very homey and cozy, and now it has a very clean format. So just the formatting is different. And then finally, the original copy had these little interviews where she would ask a question and then several moms would reply. But it kind of has the feel of like a conversation on Facebook or Instagram, and we have that in our life now. So those are all completely removed from the republished version. And it just gave this like little community conversation feel, but I think now it doesn't age well. Like it would have, nothing those women said, as sweet as it was, were like things that you had to have. So, you see, I like the history of seeing how editing and publishing takes place, and how what is really helpful 20 years ago maybe isn't relevant, like that conversation. But most of the content is completely relevant to right now. So a little bit about Elizabeth. She is a Catholic, and so that comes out in her writing, but not so much that if you're Protestant, like I am, that it would be offensive. There is a little section where she talks about saints and Advent, and that comes out in what book she recommends for catechism for her children. But you can easily skip that over, or think of like the rhythms she developed and how that would be different in your house. But some of the ideas, like she established tea time with her children. We usually do Bible first thing in the morning, but her Bible study was like 3:30 in the afternoon with her kids before they finished the school day and went out into the world. She then imparted like knowledge of the saints or catechism with her kids. Also, she's primarily influenced by two people, Charlotte Mason and this woman I had never heard of named Edith Stein, who later became a saint, a Carmelite nun, Teresa Benedicta. Not familiar with her. She quotes her as Edith Stein, so I think she was published as an author before she became a nun. And it was really fun to see just kind of a different take on Charlotte Mason, because a lot of the things is that we have been in Charlotte Mason home educators as long as we've been homeschooling. It is fun over time and with different groups to see how people interpret her principles and to put them into practice. And so some of the ways Elizabeth talks about it, it's not radically different. It's just wonderful to hear how another family used her methodology. So I think someone would be interested in this book if they are starting Charlotte Mason education, if they were rebooting after like a dry period, like maybe they had gotten into list checking or gotten into some workbooks in a survival mode, or maybe had to really streamline things, or had time in a co-op and then was pulling out and trying to reestablish things. I think this book would also be helpful if someone wants to have vision on like how to homeschool a multitude of children. It would also be helpful for someone who wants to find simple ways to add in the riches, the nature study, picture study, artist appreciation, things like that into their homeschool. She also has an entire chapter on math in a living way. And she confesses she's a writer, her husband's a writer, they're writers, that she did not enjoy math, but she ended up finding very practical, life-giving ways to study math with her children. And she really advocates not delegating and letting her kids go, but learning with them. So that was encouraging to me to hear, like you can not love math and find ways to learn it with your kids. You can feel overwhelmed and still do things with your children. I think a lot of books are like, this is how you can delegate and pass things off. And she doesn't have that approach. And she also, if you're interested in using picture books, this would be a good book too, because some people who love Charlotte Mason or advocate for her methods aren't big on picture books, which I don't know if y'all have come into that little thing about picture books versus not picture books. So she is huge proponent of using picture books throughout all the grades. It's not for someone who wants schedules. I looked and she doesn't have a schedule. It's a little frustrating because I wanted to just see what her template was. Or if you're looking for a lot of checklists, there are no checklists. If you want to unschool, this is not the book, because she's actually very parent directed and very involved and committed. Again, if you don't want picture books, she's a huge fan. Casual homeschooling, like someone who just wants to kind of go along. She has methods for how to homeschool on the go. They were a big sports family. So she talks about bringing nature study with them on soccer tournaments and listening to audiobooks in the car. But if you want to just kind of, school's like a side thing, school is their whole family life. And if you're against sports, like she is a big advocate of sports, has quotes about how sports are important for virtue, and she's a huge advocate of not just the athletic piece, but also the character development that can come from sports. So I just put together 2 pages of some of my favorite quotes from the book, things I had underlined, and this will give you a sense of her voice. It'll also probably give you a peek into what I was thinking about when I was reading the book. So I'm just gonna probably not read all of them, but I will actually first go over the table of contents because I think it will give you a help with the scope and sequence. She, at the beginning, she talks about Charlotte Mason, some of the fundamentals of her philosophy. And then there's a chapter devoted to language arts, one to math, one to history and science, one to relationship with God, one to art, special blessings, sports as virtue. And then she goes into atmosphere about children and chores and character development. And then, believe it or not, this was the first chapter I read, and it was called Battling Back from Burnout. She gave the most complete, explanation, personal story, but then also how you won't don't act like you're not having it, but don't wallow and act like you're going to be stuck here, or you just have to put the kids all in school. But she actually at one point had a crazy year, looked at putting all the kids in school. The schools were not available, it was not an option, and she had to come out of that. So she has some really helpful information in that chapter. And then she has a really, I think her kids are all very successful, but she has a really strong sense of humility looking back. And she has a whole chapter on what I'm not going to tell you. We're not just creating these perfect kids by homeschooling. I'm not going to tell you you're going to have guaranteed perfect results, which I liked the humility and her graciousness, realizing we're all fallen sinners and some of our children aren't going to turn out like we want. And it's good to be reminded that on the front end, instead of thinking I'm going to put all the work in and then I failed if it didn't work out like I thought it would. And then she actually does have listed at the end a book list. She does a 3-year rotation, one for elementary and one for upper elementary, of books by month. And she tries to have a natural history, like a science book every month, and more of a spiritual growth one every month. And I love book lists, so I like to see her layout because it was different than what I've seen with Ambleside and Simply Charlotte Mason. And so, for example, lower elementary, the first month, she has their ABC cycles. The first month, she has, actually there's 3 groups. There's kindergarten through 2nd grade. 3rd through 6th, and then 6th through 8th grade. So for kindergarten through 2nd grade, she has the first month, she has Michael Haig, and then she uses that illustrator for the 23rd Psalm with all the Teen Rabbit, Aesop's Fables, and Alpha Bears. So she usually has something tying them together. In July of that year, she'll have them do all the Robert McCloskey. Or that Christmas, all the DiPaolo, I'm not, you know who I'm talking, Tommy
DiPaolo, or DiPaola, yeah.
She really likes him. So I liked how she had, there was method, but it was just fun to see another list. So some of my favorite quotes, she's talking about obedience, and she says, again and again, I hear that home education is not working because children won't obey. Mom can't get them to do the work. Frequently, this admission is followed by the belief that a canned curriculum will solve the problem. I assure you it will not. The problem is discipline. And you're not going to like this, but the first problem is mom's self-discipline. We must discipline ourselves to plan and follow through. We must discipline ourselves to be orderly. We must discipline ourselves to do everything without complaining. And then we must discipline ourselves to discipline our children. The most important thing we do as educators is to form the character of our children. That's on page 28. So she's, I found that really convicting because I want to blame my children or the schedule or the day. And she lays it squarely back with mom. Like, it's, if you're not in self-discipline, how will you be forming your children's character? She has several more that I've noted about obedience in Charlotte Mason, the importance of virtue. She at one point says, usually a child who is misbehaving needs more of his parents' attention. And then she talks about, let's see, I'm not going to read all of these. Oh, she actually had some really great ideas about writing. And I realized that that was something we need to shore at our home. So she goes into copy work and dictation and oral narration and what she calls dictation, which isn't what we consider dictation. It's more the child dictating and narration where she's typing it up. And she's again says, which we've heard, is they need to write every day. And we do the oral narration, and when they get older, they do written narration. But I realized there's a little gap where mommy's not writing down oral narrations, and that's something we could grow in as we're building those muscles towards daily written work. So she says, this is about writing, where do we begin to inspire a child to write and to equip him to write well? We read and write with him until he is ready to compose on his own. We provide the ideas and the tools, and we get out of the way. He will learn to write just as he has learned to speak. And we must approach the latter process with as much support, encouragement, and patience as we approach the former. She's talking about cleaning and virtue, and she says, regarding cleaning, this area of homemaking is where not only mom, but also children have an opportunity to grow in virtue. Some of the most powerful character training tools are in the broom closet. They're called mop, broom, and dust rag. Several studies, including one 40-year study done at Harvard, have proven that having household responsibilities as children are one of the strongest predictors of adult success. And at one point she says she spent probably as much time teaching them chores and housekeeping as she did actual book work, which is hard to believe after you hear all the things she does in book work. But I think the point is she took the pains to teach them well, and she saw the value in them working alongside the parents. There is a whole chapter about battling back from burnout, as she puts it, but in there the big takeaways were that the mom needs to, and she fleshes this out in detail, but she says you need to rest more and take excellent care of your physical body. You need to spend time outdoors daily, make time to be alone, and begin your day invoking the power of the Holy Spirit and end it with heartfelt gratitude. And with that, there is a quote she shares that a friend told her, which is when she was super overwhelmed, and I'm going to find this for y'all. I didn't write it down because it was her friend talking to her, but she was pointing out that when she's pregnant, she took excellent care of her body because she knew she was raising a baby. But when it came to when she wasn't pregnant, she just set herself aside and took care of all her kids. But it struck me as something that I have done. The friend tells her, you eat perfectly when you're pregnant. No sugar, nothing refined, no caffeine. You measure protein in grams to make sure you get enough every day. You take good vitamins and you never miss a nap. You never miss a day. You nap daily without apology. You exercise daily and enjoy it. You ask for help. You do this because you know that to take care of yourself well is to take care of your baby well. Then the baby is born and you push your needs aside to meet the needs of the baby and all his displaced siblings. You would be better able to meet the needs of that baby and the rest of the family if you could recognize that to take care of yourself postpartum and throughout their childhood is just as important as taking care of yourself during pregnancy. It's like the old analogy of the plane crash. If the plane is going down, put your oxygen mask on before you help your child. You can't help him if you pass out. And I know that like self-care has become, very popular to talk about, but I think this was actually in the original version of the book as well. And it's just a truth that if we're not taking care of our basic self-care of our own bodies, then we're not gonna be able to take care of our family. And then when we end up in burnout, we can't take care of anyone, and we can't even hardly take care of ourselves. So she's just also at the end of that chapter, when she looks back, she says, this is also just a good prescription on how to avoid burnout. And she tells us at one point she is not a high energy mom, but you would not know that based on how many things she talks about doing. So I think that taking care of oneself, and then she's not slothful or lazy. So I think she must have that tortoise, right? The slow and steady and maintaining all the things, which speaks to me, who can rush around and then crash the bird. And then she's talking about, towards the end, about how children are really educated by their intimacies, which is a Charlotte Mason idea. And she says, children who live a lifestyle of learning are educated by the intimate relationships they have with their parents and their siblings. These relationships are unique to families who have chosen to keep their children at home when other children go to school. Home educating families make tremendous sacrifices. They reap tremendous benefits. Over time, the latter far outdistance the former. Seeking to understand one another, to see Christ in each other, and to enrich each other with living ideas will be our path to heaven. So I found this book convicting and comforting, practical, inspirational, reassuring, and a vision casting. So I recommend it heartily, and I hope this encourages you.
That is wonderful. I wonder if any of you have thoughts that this sparked as you were listening, or even questions for Rochelle. Are there things that...
Rochelle, would you recommend the older one or the newer one?
Yes. If you want to go through and hear the story, I would recommend the new one because it's very clean. There's lots of room in the margins to write notes. And she reflects. So I like hearing I'm assuming probably the 30-year-old and the 50-year-old version of the story from, she's probably about 30 and then probably about 50, probably a little more than both. And the new one, the old one was fun. It's really hard to find, I think. I had to get it through the Georgia Public Library interlibrary loan system, but it's just more homey, right? There's a little artwork. There's these little interviews where other moms give their thoughts. But I like the new one. I can see why she made changes.
I love the idea of hearing her reflect back on some of the things that she set out to do. It's one of the reasons I love having Jeanette and Joyce in my life.
If you ever want to hear her, she has a ministry, I was telling Joyce before y'all got on, called Take Up and Read, and it's on Instagram. And she realized a lot of Catholic mothers, while really ardent, in their faith, weren't in the Word. And so for 15 minutes, I think a few months ago it was at 9 a.m. I'm not sure if it's still 9 a.m. You can find her on YouTube or on Instagram Live. She will just start with a prayer, open scripture, read, and then, kind of exegetical study. And so, well, that's really prevalent in the Protestant circles. It was really nice to find something I could do at home, and it's daily, and they're very encouraging, and they're sound biblical treat. I mean, she's right there in the Gospels. And so I like to see an author, like in the digital age, when we can see what someone looks like and sounds like, that's kind of a fun connection.
This is so fun. I feel like I had no idea she existed, and I'm definitely about Charlotte Mason. So that's cool to find a new voice to check out. But I wanted to ask what you found helpful for multiple children, Rochelle. Or even like I'm finding for myself, this is the first time I've tried homeschooling with a baby. And I just feel like there's always a babbling distraction. So specifically that. And then side note, the other takeaway is I feel like this is going to highly endorse a Peloton in my life. But yeah, I just would love your thoughts on that.
So she actually does at one point talk about getting up early in the morning and riding her bike. So that's why I use the Peloton. But she doesn't really address the babies in the way of like how to manage babies and toddlers while homeschooling. But what I see her talking about with multiple kids, she she does kind of around the dining room table, a lot of that kind of schooling where everyone's involved at all ages. Or you see with picture books, I mean, I'm the kind of person, when I hear something and I like it, I want to start it right away and see if I like it. And then if I hate it, I'll toss it in a week. But I use my children as my little science experiment. And so I pulled out, she recommends all the Brambley Hedge books for one of the early sessions from one of the first few months. I forget which rotation, but I didn't care. I was like, oh, we have those. We haven't really read them or delved in. So I pulled them out and thought in the next week or two, we'll just read them all as just have them out in our living room. And I was reading them after lunch today. So I had my 5, 7, 9-year-olds on the couch with me, and they're all crowding in. It was interesting. Like the 5-year-old just wants to hear the story and she's emotional. So she's like, oh, at every like sad part or happy part. The 7-year-old just wants to snuggle. The 9-year-old's like trying to figure out who all the characters are and who's married to who and whose child is whom. And then my 11-year-old son flops down on the other couch, flips through all the other ones we're not reading. And he loves the graphic art. He loves, there's all the pictures of all the houses and the architecture and the buildings. And he's the guy who would love all those Macaulay books or Where's Waldo, where it's very visually rich. So he doesn't care that they're little church mice, like they're little sweet mice in these little cottages. He's just all about the structure. So I think that I saw that with picture books where you can do a lot of kids. If you're looking for the like how to organize your life with lots of children, what's that other book? Managers of Your Home. Like there's other things that are more structural. She doesn't do that, but she also doesn't make excuses for having babies, where I think some people think, well, I can't have a baby because I want my older kids to do stuff, or I can't do stuff for my older kids because I have a baby, right? You can use it as an excuse to either not have the babies or to not do the sports. And her older kids, her oldest son became a professional athlete. So she talks about bouncing babies on sidelines of all these soccer games. And she would, every afternoon, I mean, she'd drag all her kids to his soccer. He'd play for 2 hours, and then she'd take all the rest of the kids with the nature bags already packed in the car to do nature study at this pond. And so we're in that place where my oldest son is in sports now, and we're trying to figure out the rhythms of how to pursue sports, do things out of the house, take care of our baby, bring her along. If you look at moms, a lot of moms things, they talk about like how to manage the babies, but I like that she was speaking that you can keep your older kids having a life and you don't have to apologize for the babies. So I don't know if that really answers your question.
No, I'm here for it. I felt very inspired to watch College Game Day as well. So I'm really excited about her sports love.
Yeah. So there's a part at the end, and I was reading this part quickly, but on sports, with her looking back part, she gives a rundown of what all her kids ended up with sports. The oldest one does an internship at the World Cup, works at USA Today. And then he's in the Forbes 30 under 30 list when he's 26, and he ends up as an exec at ESPN. She has 5 sons, I think. They all end up like playing division. I mean, one's playing Division I soccer. One spends a year in Florida with the U17 U.S. national team. Like, I don't even follow sports, but I was like, okay, they all really. And then somewhere in there, she mentions her husband is actually a writer, a sports writer. So it was clearly a priority. And I think what I also like is she did all the Charlotte Mason things that we think of as really sweet and girly, but she's doing it with all these sons, kind of like we see with Cindy. Like, you can have athletic families, you can have lots of boys, but you can still go to the symphony, you can still copy the fine art in the dining room and all make copies of this isn't limited. Just like Charlotte Mason was bringing the arts to the children of the miners' families, the athletes need to have art education as well. But I think we could talk about homeschooling with babies if you want to talk about that, Ashley, because Catherine and I have been doing that this year.
Yeah, you guys are seasoned pros. We can talk about it another time. I don't want to take up everyone else's questions, but that's definitely something from what you were sharing that I thought made me want to check it out more.
I really like what she said about virtue building and not only chores, but also having to do subjects you don't like in school. It's really an opportunity. And this, like you talked about her being kind of parent directed, that the parent is really right in there. And I see that as the benefit that we can be mentoring our children even when they're doing something that's a daily chore or activity. So I think it's really encouraging. It is this kind of life that she is proposing is exhausting for the parents. And I think it's really important that she talks about self-care in that sense of rest and getting outside, having some alone time. I think that's really healthy. And I think we should encourage all the younger moms to take this to heart.
I didn't bring this up because it wasn't my season, but I will say for those who just have younger children, like the 7 and under crowd, and they have to get the chores done, but they don't really have the helpers yet. She goes into having, help from your spouse, hiring help, like acknowledging there's times when that needs to happen. And that, for a lot, like I have 3 children that are over 7. So I have in my mind, I have no excuse. They just need help. But she acknowledges that there are periods of time. I talked to a friend yesterday who at one point, I think her children were 7, 5, 3, 1, and twins. And her husband was deployed in Turkey for that whole year. And they couldn't follow him because one of the twins had a life-threatening heart condition.
Whoa.
So like, that's the girl that needs, like, please have a live-in nanny or an au pair or get someone to come clean every single Friday.
Mm-hmm.
They're the times.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I'd love to hear more of her book recommendations.
Yeah. Sure. Okay, it was fun. I was
waited until all the real questions.
I was like, hold yourself back, Rochelle. You can't change all your curriculum. And then I was like, but wait, this was going to be a simple year where we're mostly going to try to use things we have around the house. We have a lot of these books around the house. And then I was like, and it's really easy to find at the public library. Picture books. Like, they're everywhere. Okay, I'll go through it. So she says she's hesitant to give us a book list. And then she does it for like 25 pages. So she's our girl, like, don't you think? So she does try to have one living science book and one saint biography or book of spiritual nature every month. And she asterisks the science ones and gives a cross next to the spiritual ones. So that's helpful. She has like an overall list of resources. Oh, she really loves my favorite Clarkson book, the Educating the Wholehearted Child, which, he wrote that one. So it's different than the one Sally's written more recently. It's not so terrifyingly perfect. It's the first homeschooling book my mother-in-law gave me because I asked for her. I almost stole her copy. She was like, I was reading it constantly. And she was like, I'll just give you one for Christmas. Like, I don't want it to sound like a pressuring mother-in-law. She knew I was having trouble putting it down. So she likes that book. So she had a different idea for narration that I liked, which was she has so for kindergarten, you read the Beginner's Bible. I think it's Henley. And the child orally narrates and mom types it up. And then the child illustrates and the narrations are put together in a book. She has one book that they narrate and do this with every year. So first grade is all the books of virtues, the Children's Book of Virtues, Children's Book of America, Children's Book of Heroes, Children's Book of Faith. Second grade is 3 different books.
Those are all William Bennett books, correct?
Right. It's Bennett with Haig. Am I saying his name?
Haig.
Okay. So, and then the third grade one, she has 3 about saints. You guys have to do something else. But basically she's getting this core of knowledge that you also have this nice, beautiful paper trail, which the keeping part for me is a weakness. So I'm like, oh, I love hearing how people kept their child's knowledge in a beautiful way that's lasting and you can display or keep in a special box or something. Okay, for the primary kindergarten through second grade, because I have a feeling you might want to know about that, Jeanette. September is Michael Haig. There's 4 books. October is all the Audrey Wood books, Little Mouse, Red Ripe Strawberry, The Napping House. Jeanette helped me buy that one last summer. It's precious and hilarious. And then two I didn't know, Balloonia and Silly Sally. I don't know those. November, she has When I Was Young in the Mountains and Appalachia, books by Ryland. The Rag Coat by Mills. N.C. White's Pilgrims. And then she starts the Christmas unit. And then she has a 6-week, it's all of December and part of January. She does a Tommy DePola Christmas unit. And she actually has a whole chapter where she talks about it. She really likes him. I will say she has about four recipes in the book. And this is the one thing in the book that I'm like, I have to think about this. They're not recipes I would ever make. They were like dry fish. Like, I don't even know where you would buy that. One is baked stuffed calamari. Now, at one point they lived in New England, so maybe it's like regional, but she explains you need 3 pounds of squid cleaned. I'm like, I don't have that down here in Tennessee, guys. I don't think that. So I'm not recommending it for the recipes. Okay, then she likes in January, it's A New Coat for Anna, Owl Moon, Stopping by Woods in a Snowy Evening, and Bear, which I don't know Bear. Then she has Alan Say for February, Grandfather's Journey, Under the Cherry Blossom Tree, Emma's Rug, Allison, The Bicycle Man, Tea with Milk, How My Parents Learned to Eat. March, she has Eric Carle. There's 4. April's Beatrix Potter. May is.
Does she say why she kind of camps out on one author for a month? I mean, is there like a philosophy behind that?
I bet she doesn't say, but or if she did, I missed it. But I'm guessing it's something along like why we do 6
One artist
by the same artist, a
Yeah.
month of Mozart. Yeah, where you really, it's fun. I mean, when I have a stack of all the Beatrix Potter, all the Eric Carle, I like to read all of the things by that person. It's kind of like why I wanted to read both of her books. Compare and see, or actually what's kind of fun, we have those Sandra Boynton books and we love them, but we don't just have the Sandra Boynton books from now. We have some from the 90s and we have some from 1984. My dad went to London when I was a baby and brought some back, and so my baby's reading those now, and it's fun to see some of the words have changed, and the illustrations, like they're in the spirit of, but they're totally different colors. They've totally been redrawn. I mean, I think it's fun to compare within an author. Then she has June is Peter Spear, right? And then Robert McCloskey.
Isn't Sandra Boynton, isn't she married to a writer also? I read
You would
something.
know, I don't know.
I need to look that up because there was
I love
something
her.
super interesting about her husband.
Yeah. If you follow her on Facebook, she writes cartoons and they're really funny.
Okay.
There's one thing I'll say about this idea of like going through the beginner's Bible. I often put 2 or 3 kids together and they all did that project all year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, things like that, because it was too hard to have reading 1-to-1 and a different book to a second and a third book to a third.
Wow.
So we tended to have 3 at a time. We actually had 3 groups of 3 that we kind of consciously had projects like that, and it made it easier for me. So I didn't try to have a different book for each child. So I'll just offer that up.
That's good. That's a good note. I'm not doing it. I was more like, oh, I like that she used one book and had all the written illustrated narrations from it because of the continuity. We're sort of doing that with our history this year. I said, we're going to have one thing that we're doing picture and written narrations from really consistently. We're doing Explorers 1815, and then next year we'll do the continuation. And I thought, well, we'll just get one really nice book. So all the drawings and illustrations and narrations will be for this one topic. So we'll have, but we started that a month ago.
Yeah. And it is true what you say, Rochelle, when you start reading, everybody comes. Doesn't matter how old they are. You never grow out of picture books. So. Oh, did she talk at all about having older kids read to younger kids?
No.
Because that's another thing that we would often do just as part of the daily routine. Different people would be assigned different sometimes groups of children that they'd work with. So for example, Heather did a famous manners unit study with the younger kids. And they
Yeah.
still talk about it. But
Do you
yes,
have, did she use the Monroe Leaf book, Manners?
yes, we've used that one, but she had another one that a homeschool mom had put together that was really, yes, tip top.
Yeah.
So her future husband was coming to visit from England, and she had this idea that he would like run away scared when he saw how our children actually behaved. So I was talking to him about this last week, and he said, actually, they were better behaved than I was. So he said there was no fear.
I love that she had that external motivating factor though.
She did.
And I'm glad to know my 13-year-old is not alone. Sometimes we're leaving the house, she's like, mother, she cannot wear that. I'm already so embarrassed. And here she's wearing that. I'm like, so she's changing people's clothing, or we already are those homeschoolers, all those children. We need to at least be dressed civilized to go in public.
Yes, this is important. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, but I really like her ideas of the family learning together. I think that's beautiful. So have any of you seen ways that this start of the school year has allowed your family to be together in a meaningful way? Have you had a moment that just encouraged you in the last month? I'll tell you one story. I got to homeschool for 2 weeks. I just got back, but my grandkids love to draw, and the middle son and his little sister, who's 4, actually draw on the same piece of paper and tell each other a story while they draw. This is something they developed for themselves. And I was so captivated watching this because he's a boy, he's 8, she's a little girl who's 4, but they work together and they look forward to this time every day when they create a story together and have all these pictures. And it's really been a neat enrichment for the 4-year-old too. So that was something I enjoyed.
We had a sweet experience on Monday. My sister was in town with her 2 children, and I had all 6 of mine, and we took them down to reflection riding. And we used to do weekly nature walks there when my eldest was 4, and we haven't been in several years. And so my baby is 17 months, and it was the first time we had shoes that she really wanted to wear the shoes. And so all the nature walks in the last year, she's been in the carrier. Well, the last year and a half been in the carrier, but this time I was like, you know what? My niece is just turned 4, and I knew she would probably ask her mother to carry her if my baby was in the carrier. So I thought we'll just go with the 1-year-old and 4-year-old pace, and then there won't be so much whining for my niece. So, like, I was trying to be helpful to my sister, and so it was so fun though to see my daughter's first real like nature walk where she got to walk. And memory, it kind of brought back memories of when my oldest was little like this, and we go on the nature walks because they did some very similar things. You know, the leaves are everywhere, and she walks up. We are like still 20 feet from the car. She sees a leaf upside down, so the stem's poking up. And she's so excited, like it's so exciting. She pulls at the little leaf, she looks at it, she's talking a little jump, all about the leaf. And we all we had to take a picture and a video. And instead of me just being excited, all my big kids are like, our baby, like they're all experiencing with me now. They're like, our baby's talking, it's a leaf. She's wearing shoes. And then she puts the leaf back where she found. So it was just fun things that I used to do with my eldest. Now, you know, she's 13 and doesn't always get to come on the nature walks with us. And we're with friends, so they're with their friends. And so for us to just be with family, to all have the moment, to all enjoy each other together and come back to this place that we love but hadn't been in years. And she does talk about, like at one point she's talking, Elizabeth Foss is talking about tea time and how she established it when she had all these boys. And then she's explaining how they recently reestablished it because the 3 children who hadn't been born yet hadn't experienced it, and now it's 3 girls. And it was just like, oh, this reminder, like I'm doing it again, but this group hasn't done it. We have to reestablish it because they don't even have memories of doing it because they were either the baby or they weren't born yet. But we get to do it again, which second chances. And repeating things you love was fun.
That's good.
And the weather is perfect right now.
Anyone else have any moments that just encouraged you this month? Well, I hope you'll be thinking about this, because that is one of the wonderful aspects of homeschooling, is that time together as a family. So when we meet next month, we'll have some more stories. And are there any questions that people wanted to bring up this week? I had kind of on my email said, bring questions that you might just have just about anything. And we're delighted to have Jeanette with us this week. So I really value that. So like if you have a question about books, she's really good. So just any questions that you're thinking about since we were together last.
I've just been thinking a lot about making a schedule that serves us as a family versus the other way around of what you were sharing last time, Catherine, in terms of like, that's the order, I guess, to think about your time. So I've been trying to make it work around us a little bit more versus feeling constrained to something, I guess, more prescribed.
That's good. And sometimes with schedules, I think Catherine had talked about this, that it's okay if you kind of just do things in a rhythm. And if it doesn't, not everything every day, you give yourself grace on that. So, yeah. But Catherine, I thought your talk last time was really helpful too. Just to make the main thing, be a genius at the priorities.
I need to go back and relook at all of that and make sure I haven't lost track in the weeds of.
Oh,
When I get overwhelmed, I think it's helpful to remember like my relationships. Like I'm a homeschool teacher, but where that falls in the hierarchy of relationships. So like first I'm a child of God, then I'm married to my husband, and then I'm a mother to these children. And then in the subset of mothering, I'm feeding them and clothing them. And then within that is teaching them and reading to them. But just to remember, I'm their mother before their teacher first. And then when things get overwhelming, like her list of a burnout partly was helpful because it's things that are good for my children. And it would be better for me to feed them all a good breakfast, take them all on a walk, take them to the grocery store or the library, come home and read them stories, and all take a nap than it would be for me like, we are doing this school list and yell at everyone, which I've done both. So, and there is a place for the checklist and the math lesson and the spelling. But some people in my family, we can, when we're stressed, just cling to the schedule thinking that it will, that trying harder will be the solution. And sometimes it's not the right solution.
yeah. Well, I hope the conversation that we started here will keep going. And I know we often have ways of either emailing or talking to each other between times. So please take advantage of that. And especially Ashley, as you're thinking about homeschooling with a baby, talk to Rochelle or Catherine. They can give you some encouragement. Yeah.
How old's the baby?
He's 6 months. So I was thinking of you with your delight with nature study, because my kids are like cackling every mealtime because he just started solids and they think it's like the funniest thing in the world. Little do they know he has not had a lemon, but I'm sure you all remember giving your child a lemon for the first time, and that's like the best of the best. So there's only more things to look forward to.
Great.
That's great. Well, this has been a wonderful encouragement. And thank you so much, Rochelle. This is great. And if anyone has an idea for something to present next time, just let me know. We would love it. So I hope you all have a great month. And I will be, I was going to ask y'all, is it okay if we do first Fridays? Some of you have commitments. Would that be okay? Because some of our other members asked if we could kind of set a schedule so that they can plan around it. So if that's okay, I will send out an email to that effect. All right. Okay. Well, I'll see y'all next month. Have a great homeschool.
Bye.